Hi, I'm Nikki, the obsessive bookseller. Welcome to this episode of Read, Burn, Hoard. It's a series on my channel where I take one shelf and focus on it for the entire month, researching all the books and carefully deciding whether or not to continue hoarding the books or to unhaul them. And I also like to read one or two along the way. I say one or two because I always have really high ambition, but when it comes down to it, no. I am only reading one per shelf, and I need to just be okay with that. If I had nothing else going on, I would read only from that shelf every month, but I have too many other really important series going on right now. Maybe eventually I can get myself down to where I'd feel comfortable doing that, but my reading life is more important than some of my backlist titles. Even so, I love that I'm experimenting with them. I'm really hoping to find that hidden gem at some point. At the end of the last episode, I picked shelf number 3 as the focus for this one. And I have some grand plans. I am so excited that this shelf got picked. Let me show you what we're working with. This is shelf number 3. Now, let's get some perspective here. Many of you have caught my new A to Z challenge where I am focusing on shelf number 1 and working my way through it for the entire year. So in my mind, shelf number 1, that's going to be whittled down over the next several months. That is so exciting. Shelf number 2, one of my very first picks, and a shelf that I have already curated and one of the few that actually still has some space left over. Great progress, right? What I'm hoping to achieve this month is to either read or burn enough titles so that I can squish what's left over from shelf number 3 onto shelf number 2 and then proceed to shift everything up in my collection. It has been driving me so crazy that I've not been able to move anything around for this project because everything's got to stay kind of set within its own little frame here. That way every single book gets evaluated over the course of the entire project. And there are 34 shelves total, meaning my favorite pastime of reorganizing my books is something I have not been able to do since I started the project, and it has been driving me crazy. I've tweaked it here and there, but for the most part, I have not been able to move anything. Now, freeing up a single shelf by completing that master plan of mine won't be like the most amazing thing for the collection that I've ever done, but what it will allow me to do if I shift everything is to get some of those horizontally stacked piles back down to vertical and then get rid of the books that are just kind of stacked on top. If I do all of that, then I will have a little more breathing room up there. Anyway, that's the goal this month. Let's take a look at the titles here. This is one of the few sections that I actually had a few ideas of what I wanted to do with it before going into it. I have a couple of very clear reads and a couple of very clear burns. It'll be kind of about evaluating the in-between titles to see if I really want to keep and read them, making sure I know what I have on here. So instead of going through the shelf like I usually do and then re-going through the shelf as I do research on them, I'm just going to do it all at once. I have this Lord of Snow and Shadows series by Sarah Ashe. I believe this is the initial trilogy, and then there's a couple of books that take place after it. Nope, I just checked inside the covers. So this is one set, and this is the first 2 books in a second trilogy. I don't know if they're related or not. This book here has an owl on the cover, and really I didn't know anything about it, but I did a little research when I found out I was going to be doing shelf number 3, and it's got dragons in it. It's a dragon story. So I am interested. I mean, it does have dragons on the next 2 covers, but I've only ever remembered the cover for the first one. No, I'm pretty sure I want to keep this one and read it at some point, but I will need to do some research on it to see, like, I don't know, I just kind of want to check out Goodreads reviews and see if other people mostly enjoyed it. I have no idea on this one, so I'd like to look into that as well. The Counselor by E.J. Beaton, not gonna lie, is one that I think I might want to read this month, but it kind of feels like cheating because I have only owned this book for a couple of months. And so to buy it and then read it for this project where I'm trying to focus on backlist and books I've been hanging on to for years, yeah, feels kind of like cheating. But I've heard good things about this one, and I like politically driven novels, and that's literally the only thing I know about it. Okay, a couple of books by Carol Berg. I believe this is a duology. Flesh and Spirit is the first book. And the only reason I picked this series up is because they have Luis Royo covers, and he's my favorite artist. And I don't do this on purpose, but I have read most of the books that he's done artwork for. I'm just really drawn to them. Cover art really does make a difference, I tell you what. I looked into this one a little bit because I had no idea what it was about, and even just a couple of days later, I've already forgotten what I read because I kind of glazed over it, but I did get the essence of like a monastery setting, which sounds interesting. The guy is a cartographer by profession. I love reading about people in books who are really good at a certain craft, and if that craft is explored at any length, I really enjoy it. So if I don't read The Counselor, I am most likely going to give this one a go. I have books 2 and 3 in a series also by Carol Berg that we actually read the first book for our Patreon book club called Transformation. And it was like a, solid 3-star, had some issues with it, but overall was interested enough in it to want to continue at some point. The completionist in me and the OCD part of me says, you really need to just take this month and try to finish out this series. That way you won't be hanging on to anything. And it won't go on long enough that you'll forget what you read and you'll have to go back and reread to continue, and then they'll just sit here forever. That's what one part of me wants to do. The other part of me says, it was just a 3-star read. Why don't I take a chance on one of the other 2 and see if I can find myself a 5-star read? That's what I should do, but I don't know what I'm actually going to do. And I have another series by this author, Son of Avanar, the description of which was the reason why I initially picked up this author. I thought, okay, that sounds like fun. My first book doesn't have a cover, but the next ones in the series do. They are out of order. So I am also interested in this one. I know for sure it's one that I want to hoard, but I don't believe I want to start that until after I finish this, which is so weird to me because that is a very hard rule that I'm sticking with. Yet, I'm willing to start these. I make no sense. Anne Bishop. Let's talk about Anne Bishop for a minute. I have all of these titles by this author. I was so excited to get to this series at some point. However, this is one of the few where I have already made up my mind before even picking this shelf that I would like to burn these. First of all, I tried her Others series. It's an urban fantasy, and I DNF'd the second book. I had so many complaints. It's one of my most ranty reviews for that first and second book that I've ever written. I know that this author's writing style just doesn't work for me. She does not seem like a polished author. There are so many glaring things about storytelling that I don't think she's doing well. And for someone to be this prolific in the industry and to not meet a certain standard for me is just really weird. Anyway, so I was already looking at these through a different lens when a trusted Goodreads friend, someone I've been friends with for a really long time, I know how she reviews books. We kind of see eye to eye on a lot of things. If anything, I think she's a little harsh on things. She reviewed this book, and I'll link it below. Everything in this review, and it contains a lot of spoilers, led me to believe that I will not enjoy this series at all. Not at all. It's problematic, and on top of being problematic, it's not written very well. So you're basically in it just to get the essence of the story and to come away with kind of the atmosphere of what the author was trying to do. Yeah. So this is one of the few where I've had a lot of time to think about it, and even though I want to read these, I just don't. So I am going to be listing those and letting those go. There's someone out there who will appreciate them a lot more than I will. And that leaves Airs Beneath the Moon by Toby Bishop. My mother got a hold of this copy, and it is beat to shit. These also don't have covers, but basically it's a Pegasus story, fantasy adventure. My mom really liked them, and that's the reason why I've been hanging on to them all these years. I need to do some research to see if it's the type of story that I think I will read within the next 5 years. It's kind of my benchmark. So I'm going to pull those out as needing research. I'm going to pull those out as needing research. I am pretty sure I'm going to end up keeping this series, but I would like to look into it a little bit just to be sure. You never know what you're going to come across. Just for the sake of organization, pull those out too. Okay, so we have Definite Keeps there. I'm probably going to read that one. Then we have Continuations, which yes, I am interested in getting to. I picked up a couple of audio copies for these under $5 during one of Audible's really big sales, so I'm committed. I think I have the first one and this one as well. And because these ones actually have covers, it makes me more inclined to hang on to them, just long enough to see if I actually like the series. And it is not lost on me that if I just read a couple more or decide to unhaul those, that those would fit just nicely up in this empty space here, and then I would have an empty shelf. One thing at a time. Oh. And I'm noticing another Anne Bishop down here on the shelf below. This one without a cover. That's an easy burn. We're just going to get rid of that right now. Okay, so my next update will be letting you know what research showed me on this one, starting my read of this one. Hey there, here with the Read Burn Hoard update. So I made some decisions here, made some progress, got some stuff to talk about. Okay, first of all, Airs Beneath the Moon by Toby Bishop. I did some research on these, and the first book is available in ebook. The second book is not available in ebook. So if I got rid of these, I wouldn't be able to ever find it again unless I wanted to rebuy physical copies. And a lot of my criteria for getting rid of strips is that I can get a hold of a copy anytime I want. That's not the case with these. And to boot, my mom read them and really liked them, as you can see by the fact that the spines are absolutely destroyed. Love you, Mom. So based on those couple of factors, I am going to hoard these. A couple of series by Sarah Ash. I still don't know if they're related. I didn't look into it that much. But I decided for sure I am hanging on to this set here. I don't know much about it, but you know, the ratings are pretty decent, and it's one that I've always kept that I thought I would really like to get to that eventually. And then researching this, it's a duology, so I have the entire thing right here, and I kind of want to hang on to these until I read the first trilogy to see if I like the writing style, and depending on how that goes, I'll either hoard or burn these ones. So based on what's left on the shelf, I think it really likely that next time I get around to it, I will be picking up this author. And I like the way the spines look. That's a factor too. I like my shelves to be pretty. So, hoarding these. So what that left me with were a bunch of books by Carol Berg. And so I decided to pick up Flesh and Spirit. This is a Luis Royo cover, which they're very hit or miss. It's not an indication of quality, but I absolutely love this artist. He's my favorite. So anything that he does the artwork for, I pick up. And so I've been saving this one for a rainy day because I'm like, oh, it's got to be good. And the premise sounded interesting. I mean, he's a cartographer, which right there you have a character with a cool skill set. I love that kind of stuff. And he finds himself in a monastery and kind of has to acclimate to life there. And there's a little bit of magic involved, and that's really all I know. And unfortunately, okay, so I picked this one up on audio because I don't have time to physically read this month. And I made it to about the 15% mark, like several chapters in. And I couldn't tell you anything more about what the story's about now than I could before I started reading it. It was incredibly boring. So many info dumps, just like pages and pages of talking about like how everything is relevant in this world, and there's no actual plot progression, but when something does happen, it felt very disjointed and like, what are we doing? I'm so confused. And I thought, okay, well, maybe it's the audio. I have read a book by this author before. My patrons and I read Transformation for our book club. Kind of an odd pick, but I was really excited about it based on some comments I got when I did my Sunday Shelfie series. And it worked out well, and I have the other two on my shelves, and I thought, okay, well, if this one's not working, then maybe I'll switch to this one and see if I can continue the series, because I either need to continue it or unhaul it. It's one of those things where once you start a series, if it's not super top priority, there's a chance you'll never get back to it. And if you do get back to it, you probably have to reread the first book, and if it was only like a 3-star, well, who has time for that kind of stuff? So anyway, short story long, I decided to pick this one up and instantly, completely engaged in the story. I really like the audio narrator for it, and I really enjoyed it. I'm about 25% of the way through, and it's stronger than the first book. Things that are happening make just a little bit more sense, and it's got a stronger voice. The characters still are a little weird, like they're not fully developed. They seem kind of like caricatures. But that's okay. The rest of the things are working well enough for me that I'm not minding that particularly. So the fact that her writing with the right narrator actually is working for me in this context, perhaps if I were to pick this one up physically, I would have a better experience with it. I wish I had more time this month to physically read, or else I would just dive in and see if the physical read would be better. But for now, we're going to hoard this series, giving it the benefit of the doubt that the narrator was just dry, and kind of go from there. So yeah, my pick this month, Revelation, second book in the Rai Kara series. It's kind of interesting. The first book, the premise, he's a slave, but he belongs to this faction of magical beings who fight demons on another realm. There aren't very many of them left, and so his skill set is particularly valuable, but the people who have him captive don't really understand that or know that about him. And for reasons which we're just going to kind of go with, he ends up becoming a scribe to the prince and kind of gets involved in all of the politics in that regard. So he is kind of involved in all of the happenings of this world, which is a pretty interesting place for a character to be, even though getting him there felt a little contrived. And the thing that lost me near the end of the first book was it kind of took on a metaphysical aspect. The part where they're fighting demons, they have to do it on a different realm. And I have a hard time with that to begin with. I find those passages incredibly boring, and I didn't find it particularly well done. I also found character motives kind of switched on a dime. So the characters weren't very consistent, and she went for a couple of reveals that just weren't believable to me. But I enjoyed the writing style, and the ideas of the story were very interesting, so that's why I kind of flagged it as maybe want to continue. So, Read, Burn, Hoard, thank you. You are forcing my hand. I am continuing, and I'm actually liking the second book a little better. I'm not having quite as many problems with this one, probably because I know more what to expect. But I read the back of the book before diving in, and there's one aspect about the demons that I found interesting, and that's kind of what this is exploring. So hopefully this is a much better experiment this month. So anyway, that's what I'm reading. I'm actually doing a continuation. Go me! So I will let you know how this one goes, and we'll go from there. Hey, here with a final Read, Burn, Hoard update. So as you know, I've been reading Revelations by Carol Berg, and I am just past the halfway mark. And you know what? I think I'm going to abandon this series. It had me at the beginning. There was enough compelling things, like 2 main plot points that were interesting enough to read along for. And then she just kind of dropped them at about like the 30 or 40% mark and didn't pick anything back up. So we're just kind of meandering through the plot here. And I find myself in the middle of about 4 or 5 books right now. And we're talking like really good books. I'm reading the new Daniel Abraham. I just got approved for the arc of The Will of the Many by James Islington. I'm reading the newest Kate Daniels book by Ilona Andrews. I have all these amazing titles that really I should be focusing on the best books first. It's my personal mantra. And yet with these books, I'm kind of forcing myself through them because they're not bad, but they're also not amazing. And I find between all of the other things that I would rather be reading, these ones don't even hold a candle. I'm kind of forcing myself through them. And the point of all of this is to curate my shelves and to find the best books. And it's clear that these are not. And I've had a really hard debate on this one because, so I have the trilogy here. We read the first book as just a buddy read with my patrons for book club, I think. And then we've got the second book here and the third book. And actually, this is the best cover of the 3, I think. So calling a DNF means I have 3 beautiful books here that I would need to consider unhauling, and unhauling them means that I'll probably never get around to reading them again. Not to mention the fact that I have digital content on all of them. Whatever. But yeah, I think I just have to finally admit to myself that no matter how much I push myself through this series, that this author is just not my favorite. It's always possible I'll change my mind in a few years and I'll be like, I really want to know what happened in that one random series that we read. In which case, I'll just pick up digital copies. But I imagine that, I mean, all of the series I've felt like this before, I've never gone back and reread. I've felt guilty that I've not gone back and reread them, but I've never actually picked anything back up and continued on. So I think the fact that I'm not excited to read these means I need to just curate my collection and let them go. So with that said, let's go do the final tally of the shelf and we will pick another one. Kind of a dark day. Okay, so we're keeping these ones to be explored, probably next time I make my way through the shelf. Hoarding the Counselor, because I think I'm really going to like it. Hoarding these for now until I have a chance to read them physically, and then they might go the same way as the series that I'm letting go today. And same thing with this. I've got The Son of Avanar. It's a 4-book series here. Hoarding that until I have a chance to at least try it. There are redeeming qualities about Carol Berg's writing for me, but yeah, not enough to want to continue the story that I'm in at the moment. And then we have the horse one that I'm keeping just for the sake of. So this is the Hoard this month. And this is a combination of the read and burn. So I will be listing all of these on my Pango account and moving on with my life. It's such a shame. I think if I only had these on digital, I wouldn't be feeling the pain of letting them go so much. But when you have these beautiful physical copies, it can be hard to let it go. But yeah, I have to look over here at my collection of all-time favorites and remind myself that I have plenty of books that I absolutely loved, and if I let these go, I still have a considerable collection. So, burning these, so let's pick another shelf. Okay, my favorite part. As if shaking it up is going to make it any more random than it already is. Oops. Okay, shelf number 7. Shelf number 7. Woohoo! Yet again, another month where I don't have to stand on my tippy toes on a ladder to reach everything. This is going to be good. It also works well for my A to Z challenge because eventually, ideally, I'll be running that one long enough that I will actually get to this one. And wouldn't it be great when I got to shelf 7 if it were completely curated for me and ready to go? Love it. Anyway, looking forward to exploring this shelf next. Can't wait. Thank you so much for following this series and watching, and I hope to catch you next time. Bye.